All right, I hope everybody can see my slides right now. Let me know in the chat just in case if something is not clear or you can't see the slides, but I think we should be able to see them in just a moment. Let me get settled here. Welcome to those who are joining us just right now. Thank you for tuning in today. All right, great. And I think we can start recording. So Jill, if you don't mind, start recording. This would be great. Welcome everybody. Today is our second webinar in the series. Today we will talk about YSEALI Seeds theme and budget. We will dive deeper into how the YSEALI Seeds application looks like, what are the important parts of the application, then how to construct and build a smart budget and trustworthy budget, and then we will address questions that you have. So again, as a reminder to those who just joined us, we do have a chat button where you can say hello and welcome everybody, and we also have a Q&A button. That button is specifically for your questions, so we don't lose any questions from the ones that are coming. Make sure to let us know in the Q&A so I can answer some questions at the end of our webinar. And all right, excellent. We have more and more people joining. Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. So if you're ready, let's get started. Oh, too fast. For those who are joining, maybe for the first time and wondering what is this all about, just a quick reminder, YSEALI Seeds for the Future is a small grants competition that provides funding for the region's most promising young leaders in Southeast Asia to carry out projects that improve their communities, their countries, and the region across different program themes. And currently, YSEALI has 4 themes. Those are civic engagement, education, economic growth, and sustainable development. YSEALI Seeds has been established a few years ago. This is the 5th year, actually 6th year when we are running the program. YSEALI Seeds for the Future is just one of the programs under the umbrella of YSEALI. As you know, Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, or YSEALI for short, is a larger initiative supported by the US government that provides opportunities for young leaders in Southeast Asia to contribute into their communities in the region. So YSEALI Seeds for the Future is the program that we are currently going to be talking about, and we currently have call for applications to submit your proposals and your great ideas, innovative ideas to help address different issues in different places throughout Southeast Asia. So that's the program we will be focusing on, just making sure that all are on the same page. Again, here's like a schedule of things that are important to keep in mind. Again, for those of us who just joining, welcome and thank you for joining. Those of you who have provided your email addresses upon entering into Zoom room, you will receive an email recording of this webinar and the slides from today's session, so no need to take notes unless you really want to. But back to the slide here, again, we've already had our first webinar, so if you missed it, please go to the Cultural Vistas YouTube channel. We have a specific channel for 2020, or playlist, I should say, for 2021 YSEALI Seeds for the Future. You can re-watch that webinar and get more information that you might have missed that we already covered earlier. So today is the second webinar, and then we also have 2 more. So please mark your calendar if this is important, and I think it is, to get more information, to be more successful in your crafting your proposal and submitting your proposal for YSEALI Seeds for the Future. So today, again, we are talking about YSEALI Seeds application itself. So we will talk about YSEALI themes and the budget. Next week, same day, same time, also on Wednesday, or actually it's going to be Thursday for you. Or no, Wednesday still, different time zones. Just make sure that you tune in at 7 p.m. Jakarta time. So that's what we are aiming for. So the third webinar will be a dialogue with YSEALI Seeds grantees, and we have 3 wonderful 2020 YSEALI Seeds winners who will be joining me, and they will be sharing all about their process of applying for YSEALI Seeds. So if you do have questions for those who have gone through this experience already, please, prepare those questions, bring them with you. It's going to be a great discussion. We will open the floor for you to talk to our grantees and ask everything you want to know. And the final webinar will be just the conclusion, and it's closer to the application deadline. But that webinar will be mostly for you to ask your last minute questions or anything that is not clear. We will slightly touch on how to sustain your project, how to think about your project long term as you craft your proposal, and we will share some stories about other successful projects as well. So tune in for that one. Application deadline, that's an important date to keep in mind. So November 8th, 2020 is the deadline, final date to submit your YSEALI Seeds for the Future proposal, your application. So make sure to not miss that. And then overall, a few people have asked us how would the program timeline look like. So generally right now we are projecting that the projects that are selected will be announced sometime in February 2021. And then we will have a virtual kickoff workshop with those projects who are selected. And this will happen approximately in March 2021. And then the project implementation period will take place from March to December 2021. And then the final reporting, basically that's when we expect that you will conclude and finish your YSEALI Seeds project, is right now scheduled approximately January 1st, 2022. So this is what you need to know to start working on your proposal and planning some activities that you might include in your proposal. I will briefly remind application requirements and eligibility criteria, just because this question comes up a lot. And for those of you who are joining maybe for the first time, it's just something also to mention to all. Again, check your eligibility on the YSEALISeeds.org, which is our website. But again, here on the slide, you can see that you must be a citizen of one of the YSEALI countries or ASEAN plus Timor-Leste. Then you must be between 18 and 35 years old. And that's also the question we get quite a lot. So if you are 18, by the time you are submitting your application, it's great. If you're 35, by the time you're submitting application, that's great. Unfortunately, those are the rules. If you are 16 or 17 right now and you really, really want to participate in the program, I feel you, and this is great. I mean, we definitely want you to, keep developing, keep searching for opportunities. I would recommend for you to maybe use this 1 year or 2 years that you have volunteering or interning or gaining more perspectives and more experiences, and then apply once you turn 18. So that's something that I would advise for you. And for those who are older than 35 years old, you can still participate in the YSEALI Seeds project. You might just not be able to take one of the 3 leadership roles, which is project leader, project secretary, or project treasurer. But you can participate in the capacity of a consultant or a support team member, providing your knowledge and expertise and supporting those young leaders within the projects. All right, so we already covered the YSEALI themes. We'll talk more about it today. And again, we require that for your YSEALI Seeds application, you select at least 3 core dedicated team members, which is very important to ensure success of your project. So you must have a project leader, project secretary, and a treasurer. We will also talk specifically about these 3 people and how to separate the roles and the duties that these people will have. And somebody's asking if the group members number is restricted. No, it is not. At least as long as you have at least 3 core team members, that's the requirement. You can have more, and you can add additional team members. You can have one-time volunteers. You can have some contractors that you hire to just do some kind of things, for your project. But we don't limit necessarily. Again, it must be feasible. If you, in your proposal, you say that you want to have 50 people on your team, I would question how you're going to manage that unless your project really requires 50 team members constantly working on your project. So I hope that makes sense, but great questions. Keep them coming. All right. So we will, like I said, we will touch on the 3 core team members more in detail later in the presentation. So again, plan on your project to be completed or actually completed between March and December 2021. Now, it does not mean that your project needs to stop and never ever exist after December 2021. In fact, we encourage and we hope and expect that the YSEALI Seeds project will be more of a long-term, sustainable, impactful project. But this period of your performance, specifically for YSEALI Seeds, is so that you can fulfill the commitment that you describe in your proposal. But then you can definitely have a sustainability plan in mind to keep on developing and supporting your project after your official participation in the YSEALI Seeds is over. So you're welcome to dream big. It just needs to also be thought through, and it also needs to be logical in your proposal as well. Not overly ambitious, but not under ambitious. Keep the golden medium here. So, and the final thing that I wanted to say here on the slide is that previous YSEALI Seeds winners could serve in the capacity of consultants or support team members. Unfortunately, if you have been already awarded YSEALI Seeds for the future award in the past, we ask you to let other young leaders to use this opportunity to build their project. But we will never say no to you if you want to come and support and help. You just cannot be a project leader, a project secretary, or a project treasurer, but you could be a support team member. All right, I hope that makes sense. Again, just as a reminder for those who just joined us, welcome. We do have a Q&A function, so please submit your questions if you have them. I'll try to address them all at the end of our presentation. And some of them, maybe if I see something that I can address right away, I might take as well. All right, a little bit of repetition too from the first webinar, but what are we looking for in the YSEALI Seeds for the Future proposal? So here are the key recipe for the best outcome. So ideally, if your project shows us that it is scalable, sustainable, feasible, innovative, replicable, have measurable impact, it could be train the trainer, it could be multi-country, but not necessarily. And also we want to see that there is a potential that you and your team will be future resources and the future engaged alumni who will support those who will come after you. So that's what we want to see ideally. Again, last week I have explained a little more about each of those segments. So if you want to, you can go back and rewatch the webinar one on the Cultural Vistas YouTube channel. But again, if you have any urgent questions, let me know if you need explanation of any of those points again. All right, just to inspire us all, I want to share some examples of a few projects that are truly inspiring, that succeeded in submitting successful good application, and they succeeded at being selected, and they succeeded at implementing their project. So it's a great pride for me to share with you about one of the projects from 2019, Pink Collar Community from Malaysia. So two inspiring young women from Malaysia decided that they want to address issues of domestic workers and created ethical employment agency in Malaysia, working with Malaysian employers and Filipino domestic workers coming into Malaysia and other countries as well. So what they notice is a big gap or the big need in the community for having this very ethical, very people-oriented agency that could fulfill that gap and help educate the employers about ethical employment strategies, and help also empower and equip and educate the domestic workers so they know about their rights and they know about things that are available for them. Truly inspiring project. If you want to learn more about their story, you can also find a full article that we actually did a story on them covering their success and their project on YSEALISeeds.org. On our website, under the press releases and articles, you will find a story specifically about Pink Collar Community in Malaysia. So again, why I'm talking about this project is because, as you can see, they did great during the YSEALI Seeds, but then they keep on working and keep on establishing their project further. So the project did not end with their YSEALI Seeds participation. If only, like, it's quite the opposite. YSEALI Seeds gave them the platform to build it even further, to establish it further. So now they are full-scale organization working and helping promote the goals that they have established for themselves. Another reason why I'm bringing this as an example is that some people have been asking, can we apply for YSEALI Seeds if we already have an established organization? And the answer is generally yes. This is the example of Pink Collar Community. They already had an organization that was quite functionable. It was the beginning of their journey, but there was an established organization. The one important thing to notice or to note here is that YSEALI Seeds for the Future grant funding cannot be used to generate revenue or profit for your for-profit side of your organization or your business. YSEALI Seeds funding should be used to serve and benefit the community, right? So this is a very important thing to keep in mind. It should not be used as for self gain in a way. So make sure that if you have a nonprofit, great, make it clear in the proposal how you're going to, maybe separate the finances, how you're going to manage it. If it is a for-profit business, we might need to have a deeper conversation and understand better how exactly you're going to benefit the community, not generate the revenue if you receive the funding from YSEALI Seeds. Let's see. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know if anybody have additional questions on this. We will jump, more into the detail once we talk about the budget as well. But another project to talk about is from 2020. So Grow ASEAN from the Philippines. So hello to all of those who are joining us from the Philippines today. You probably know this team who also applied with an established organization already, but their idea was to design educational materials and trainings for farmers in the Philippines to train them in digital agriculture. Again, great idea, even though they do have their own organization functioning already. This was a side project that was designed specifically to bring this good benefit for the community without necessarily gaining financial profit from this. So again, great project. You can also check them out on the website and the Facebook. The team is quite good at keeping everybody on track and updated about things that are happening. They have currently selected their fellows from actually a few countries, not only the Philippines, those fellows who are going through intensive workshops and preparation and learning through the platform that Grow ASEAN have created. And the final one I also wanted to mention to inspire everybody today, future deaf teachers. I know I talk about this project quite some time, and I love it because this is like a very unique project, and it has a combination of so many things that work really well in their proposal. And those combination of things are the follows. Not only that they saw the need in their community, they have the expertise, but they also managed to target a few YSEALI themes in one. So not only that they are trying to empower deaf people in the Mekong Delta through sign language teaching, but they also serving another purpose of improving social inclusion in the community as well. So a great way to kind of help those deaf people to become teachers so they can actually, and it supports the local economy if you look at it in a more larger scale, but it also supports us professionals, give them job opportunities, but it also helps the community to get better on inclusivity and understanding deaf community quite better too. So a wonderful project, and again, also an established organization as an example for you, but then this is a side project that they decided to run to benefit the community. All right. So I see that the question was also about the multi-country projects. So we do have a few of those this year. We had more last year as well. I would encourage you to go on YSEALiSeeds.org, our website, and check the 2019 grantees and 2020 grantees. So as an example, I believe that last time during the webinar I was mentioning, and during our big event, with some of the YSEALI Seeds grantees, we had a project from Brunei, Play Naturally, who actually are run by two young women, one from Brunei and one from Singapore. And so the way they manage is obviously they cannot be physically together, but the project is actually about, first it was about theater production, now it's a film production that connects with indigenous community in Brunei, in one of the areas of Brunei. So again, so an example is how two young leaders being separated by hundreds of miles could still run successful project without being physically present there. So check it out, and you can also listen to that recording of that event where project leader from Singapore was sharing about her experience. I believe you can find it on YSEALI Facebook if you scroll down, or send us an email and we'll send you the recording link as well. So again, the application for those of us who are joining for the first time and somehow you might not know where to go, YSEALISeeds.org is your best bet for all of the information regarding the application. And I'm actually going to show us right now. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen. So please let me know in the chat if you can see my screen okay. I just wanted to demonstrate again. Here is the website, right? So here where you can look for different grantees. And if you click on each button, it will take you to the whole page where you can click on each and actually look them up via their own social media and learn more about them. Here is where the application button is located, just in case if you're wondering, and the schedule for all of our webinars and how to join as well. Earlier, I mentioned about an article to read more about the project from Malaysia pink collar community. So here is that article. Take a look and read. This is quite great to just see their story, how they got inspired to run their project. And now we're actually going to go into the application itself and spend a little time talking about application. So, and I see a question was, is passport necessary for application? Not for the application. Your passport copy might be necessary later on if we are going to plan an in-person event. And for that, we will be booking some travel or making travel arrangements. And for that, we might need a copy of your passport, but not for the application. So if you don't have a passport for now, that's okay. So I would like to mention that it's important to read instructions. It's quite self-explanatory, but very often I do see that people rush into sending an email with a question that is already answered somewhere in the instructions or on the website. Just make sure that you do your due diligence and read the instructions quite carefully. We don't want you to spend all of the time and effort submitting your application to realize that you're not eligible all along. So it's quite a lot of effort. We don't want you to do that. But let's look into some of the segments and portions of this application. All right, so again, first that we have is the information on the project team, core members. So the first one is the project leader information. So please fill out the information, as accurately as you can. We do require that you provide an email address that is functioning, because this is how you're going to know if you were selected or not. We will send you an email. So make sure that your email works. That's why we have it twice, email address and then confirm email address. It's quite important for us to know. And then again, you must provide the information about your citizenship as well over here. So you must select and provide and let us know. This is quite important. Again, just as a reminder, you need to provide information accurately. You cannot lie on the application just because you don't want this to come out and then spoil your reputation. There are so many opportunities out there. YSEALI Seeds is just one of them. We don't want you to spoil your opportunities to participate in other projects if you provide untruthful information on your application. So please let us know about your citizenship status and other things truthfully. Same thing for project secretary and project treasurer. I'll spend some time on these three quite a bit, but then we also have a project background over here. So you need to tell us the name of the project. Now the name of the project could change, obviously, but the name should be something what you want to call your entire idea. So the name of the project is not the name of your project leader. It is not the name of your pad or anything like that. It just should be something that is descriptive enough and catchy enough for us to see, something that would tell us what your project is all about, right? I would say it's great if you use English. You can use your native language, but it might be slightly difficult maybe for the rest of the region or countries in the region to understand what your project is all about if you only stick to using the name in your own language. So think about, but again, if your project is only for a specific location in your country, then maybe it's okay to keep the name of your project in your native language. Just give us an explanation or translation of it so we also understand. You must choose your YSEALI theme. And again, as I mentioned, it could be a few themes in one project as well. Or it might be one theme that your project specifically focusing on. So for those of you who's asking about Skype, you don't have to create your Skype address. So as you see, this is not a mandatory field. Typically, you see this little star next to the section of your application where you must provide information. It's mandatory, but Skype address is something helpful for us, just in case if we cannot reach you via email or otherwise, we will try to reach you via Skype. So if you don't have Skype, you don't have to create one, but if you do, it's great to have it. But we do ask you to provide your phone number. That's quite important, and it needs to be a functional phone number. Thanks for the question. All right, so home nation for project team members. So here, again, if you have team members from other countries, you can mark whichever country they're from. It's great for us to know. And then you also need to let us know which nations or countries will your project take place. If it only takes place, you're applying from Vietnam and it only is going to take place in Vietnam, great, you just mark Vietnam. But if it's more than just one country, please let us know as well. So this section also gets quite some confusion in the past. So describe the team's previous involvement with YSEALI. We do not require that you have to be, a YSEALI program alum. You can be any inspiring young leader that fits other eligibility criteria. Maybe you have not had a chance to participate in YSEALI events. That's okay. You can still register to become YSEALI member. That's a requirement. And we also see this instructions up here in the beginning of the application, and there is even a website for you to register your YSEALI membership if you have not done so. It's quite easy. You just subscribe, basically provide your email and your name, and there you go. So it's quite easy. But again, going back here, if you have had previous YSEALI involvement, for example, you participated in one of the YSEALI workshops or a YSEALI fellowship program, please let us know. It's good for us to know and keep track of different things that you have done within the YSEALI overall, right? Let's go down here. So now support documents, again, we ask that you provide resumes of your 3 core team members. You do not have to provide resumes of everybody, just the 3 team members is enough. We do ask you to focus on quality, not quantity. You just need to understand that we will be reviewing over 500 applications. And if everybody submit a resume that is 10 pages long or 5 pages long, it's not going to be productive for either you or us. So please be selective, and no more than 2 pages is what we really ask you. And no more than 2 pages is typically enough for you to provide information about the core experiences. I would also say try to stay relevant, just because sometimes in the resumes I do see experiences that are not relevant to the project, or just like take the time for me to take a look at, but I don't learn anything that is relevant. By not relevant, what I mean, for example, you are trying to run a project with waste management, right? But then in your resume you have half a page allocated to different I don't know, some small achievements that you did in middle school or high school or something like that, like you won a poem citation competition or something else. Like, it's not very relevant for me necessarily in order to choose the project. So stay relevant. Some things and achievements, like I like to say, your mom, your grandma would be super proud of, and it's great, but it might not necessarily be the important information to take up that much space and time to deliver to us. So stick to a relevant information to your project, something that will help us or the committee to judge what abilities do you have to run the project successfully and complete it successfully. Okay, let's see, then project, same for project secretary and treasurer. Now the project abstract, again, we will touch on this in just a moment, but again, we ask that you submit all of your attachments either as a Word document or as a PDF document. So this is just the easiest way for us to download all of those files, and nothing needs to be reformatted. The last thing I want for you is to work really hard on your proposal and then submit it in a format that is not readable on our end, and then we can't even access your application. We can't even see what a great proposal you have. So make sure to stick to the rules over here. And again, just follow the instructions. That's your best bet in every scenario. If we ask 100 words for abstract, we do mean 100 words. it's not, I'm not joking when I say 100 words, I typically mean it. So when we say project description 1,000 words, yeah, I mean, if it's 1,001, it's fine. But what I mean is sometimes we ask for a project abstract and we receive a page, and it's not an abstract at that point. So we'll dive deeper into what the abstract is and what the description of the project is. Again, very important, project budget. You can download it from the template over here, right, in the application conveniently. And then you can submit some supporting documents. This is optional. This is not a requirement. By the supporting documents, we mean any additional, you might want to have some photos, or you have a PowerPoint presentation. Again, focus on quality, not quantity. If it's a PowerPoint slides, maybe use like up to 5 slides, not more than that. If you want to submit a video, the best thing would be is to provide a link to that video. You can upload your video into Google Drive or into YouTube, whatever, and then provide a link to that video. If you really must submit your video, we would say make it an MP4 format and let it be maybe 1 or 2 minutes long. So something that is not heavy and, you know, does not weigh as much to attach to your application. All right, and then obviously you will be checking boxes where you provide certain confirmation and verification before you submit. And again, if you have any questions or any issues with the application, you can always email us at YSEALI@culturalvistas.org. We answer everybody, but it might typically take a day or so for us to answer. First of all, we have a time difference, and second of all, sometimes we have quite a volume of emails coming in. So if we don't reply you within 2 days or so, feel free to send a reminder email and we'll get back to you for sure. Okay, I'm trying to go really fast, so let me know if I'm speaking too fast. Hopefully in the recording you will be able to stop and listen to things again, but I'm trying to make sure that we're staying on time. All right. Okay, let's see. So let's get back and really talk about the project team. Again, I mentioned with the resumes, stick to 1 or 2 pages for each team member. We do need to see each team member just because knowing who the team is tells us a lot how the project will or will not work. So again, for those of you who are right now thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not a professor yet, or I'm not an expert in my field, that's okay. We don't require you to be an expert and have a 2-page resume with extensive experience. We understand you're a young leader, but you need to show at least some interest or some kind of track record of your previous involvement, either as a volunteer or as an intern or something like that. We understand that not every team member on your list or on your project is an expert in some things. And by the way, you can hire some experts to do certain things on your project. For example, one thing that I commonly see projects do is that they allocate funds in their budget to hire a website developer. We don't expect that you can do all, you know, develop website, dance a beautiful dance, sing a song, and run a project. We understand that everybody have their own strong skills, and for some things you can hire out contractors or consultants to do some pieces of work that is a one-time type of work. But again, show at least some experience prior. This is helpful for us. All right, so I hope you can see a slide. Let me know if for some reason we can't. All right, so let's talk about the team members, shall we? So the project leader is somebody who is in charge of overall project implementation. It's, if anything else, this is the person that we will come to and ask, where is your project? How is it going? You know, so this is a super responsible main point of contact who takes the huge undertaking and responsibility, but also a great fulfilling sort of recognition and pride as well as a project leader to run your project. So you will be responsible for communication with your funder, with us, right? We will be talking quite often about your project or keeping in touch and things like that. You will be organizing your team, making decisions about who's going to be doing what tasks to assign to people. You will be probably making decisions about, you know, who else to add on your team and things like that. Again, it's really up to you. It's just sharing what we have seen in the past that work. Okay, so the project secretary could be somebody who is in charge of submitting reports and in charge of social media and sort of public messaging outside. So it has to be somebody who have interest or excitement about talking about your project, sharing about your project publicly, and crafting those messages online or to us internally, telling us how your project is doing. Because if you don't tell us how your project is doing, we don't know. You know, maybe the project is not happening. So it's very important to have somebody on the team who will be really keeping that under control and helping project leader with sharing this huge responsibility by being on time with reporting submission, you know, making sure that there's photos and videos and some footage and some things to showcase and promote on social media. You definitely have to be organized, because the last thing we want to do is chase somebody about the deadlines. You need to be really somebody who is very good with deadlines, right? Or with a very good calendar that has a very loud alarm that goes off every time you have a deadline, whatever works for you. All right. So a third member is a project treasurer. Again, so project treasurer, typically we would recommend that it's somebody who will handle finances. Sometimes project leader takes that responsibility. It's really up to you to decide what works best in your team. Again, I'm not going to come and tell you how to run your project or how to organize things within your team. You know it better. But typically, this is what we would recommend, just to divide responsibilities. So a treasurer, again, for some of you who've been asking, okay, we have an organization. Do we need to create a separate bank account? Does it have to be a personal bank account of a project treasurer or organization bank account? I would say it's up to you, as long as you know how you're going to manage the finances and separate. If it's your organization's bank account, make sure that you have a plan in mind how you're going to separate finances and know exactly where are your YSEALI Seeds expenses versus other expenses, because we will be asking. You will be submitting financial trackers, reporting every single month. So you need to have no confusion about that, just to make it easier on you to report every month. It could be a personal account for a treasurer. You can open an account specifically for YSEALI Seeds. So it's really up to you. You just need to figure out what is the best plan to stay on track and not get confused. All right, so, and then if you do have questions, just a reminder to everybody, please put them in the Q&A box, just so we don't lose them in the chat. All right, so I hope this is clear more or less on the treasurer. So somebody who is definitely organized and trustworthy, somebody who has experience with managing money. It doesn't have to be you know, quite some amount of money. Typically, most of us adults manage our funds at home. And so if you do have interest and good ability to manage your finances at home, you probably will be good at being interested in learning more and getting better at managing finances for the project as well. All right, again, and let me know if there are questions. I'm going to be checking some. All right, so let's see, project abstract. So as you know, it's one of the very important requirements, and I keep highlighting and saying this. The reason why is because this is the very first short, concise introduction to who you are, what you want to do, and why you want to do it. Okay, so please pay attention to that section of your application. It's quite important, and try to be as concise as possible. Again, the project abstract is a very short version of your proposal. It needs to be so, I would say, interesting and captivating that a person would want to go back into the proposal and read the full description of your project, because the abstract was so captivating. So this is how I would kind of describe it. Of course, we understand that everybody is a great writer, but try to do your best to tell us the most important things you want us to know about your project. And I typically recommend to have 100 words in total and have these strategic sentences. So in your first one or two sentences, tell us what your project is about and why. Again, without any additional things, it's just very short, concise. You have a chance to tell us more in the proposal. But in the abstract, 1 or 2 sentences, what it is and why, what inspired you to do it, what is the need that you're trying to fulfill. Now, 1 sentence for how you're going to make it happen, right? So is that going to be a series of workshops? Are you going to design a platform? Are you going to do some kind of trainings, or what it is? How are you going to achieve what you say in your project is all about. And then the last sentence in the abstract is, what are your anticipated results? What are you hoping to achieve? How would we know that your project was successful and it was achieved or accomplished and finished, right? So use that strategy and clean all of the supporting additional things. Those could be added, obviously, later on in the project description itself, which is, here we go. Let's talk about project description. So now that's the full version of your proposal, okay? Again, I generally would advise for you to look at this construction. Again, everybody are different, but I thought that this model would help you probably strategize your thinking a little more and help us, the reader, see the logic behind your thinking. So what happens often in the proposal is that people either add too many additional information right in the beginning, and while I'm reading paragraph after paragraph, I still don't know what the project is about and what are you trying to tell me. And only the last sentence in the end would be, oh, and we are going to, you know, create an ethical employment agency. And I'm like, wait a second, tell me more about that. Why you were telling me all of this like a research data, you know, to support your idea, and then say nothing about what the project is. So again, I want you to maybe think about this specific strategy to construct your proposal. You know, divide it into 3 segments. One is the introduction, then the body of the statement, and the conclusion. In the introduction, use 1 or 2 paragraphs where you kind of briefly outline the project, you know, again, telling us what the project is about and why, right? Then the body of the statement again. So this is where you go deeper into the why, and you explain maybe some either backup data or some supportive information about why this issue is important or relevant, or why you care so much about it, or why is such a importance to address this issue. Any evidence or anything, let us know. It's great. Second paragraph could be your proposed solution. So what it is that you're hoping to achieve with your project. Third paragraph would be a measurable outcome or impact. So that's important and something that people leave out of their proposals quite a bit. It's not enough just to say, okay, this is the issue. You know, I care about, you know, trash in my town, and my project is going to pick up trash from the streets. You know, it's great, but how do you know that you were successful? By counting how many times you went out to pick up the trash, or by, you know, how many clean streets you're as a result of your project, or how many people you educated about throwing away things on the street. I don't know. So like, you need to have a plan in mind how you're going to measure your success or your outcome, and what kind of impact is it going to be. How many cities are you going to impact with that project, or how many people are you going to impact? So think it through and let us know. Again, obviously, we understand that things might change as you start implementing your project. We understand that, but your overall goal of your project needs to stay the same. You might take different routes or different paths to achieve that, but the goal should be clear, and you need to have like instruments to measure that outcome. Okay, and the final paragraph or your conclusion basically ties together your introduction and the body of your statement. It could be something nice and powerful at the end, that maybe something visionary, something, maybe a story that you want to, sometimes I see people start with a story in the beginning and then they conclude with that story, or provide some kind of dream or a vision in the end. Something that, you know, stays memorable for a reader. Typically, I say, when you write your proposal, think about a person who's going to be reading that proposal. And imagine that this is 37th proposal that they've been reading in 2 hours. So what it is do they need to see in your proposal that it really puts you out on the map and, you know, distinguishes you from all the 27 or 30 other applications that they have read so far? Okay, so think about that. Think about your reader, your audience. Whom are you writing this for? Okay. All right, very interesting topic of the budget and the finances. Let's touch on that. I hope you can see well. If not, let me know. I can also share via the browser as well. But as you know, this is how the template looks like. Now, I don't want to say that we require 100% that everybody use this template. You can submit your own sort of budget. It just needs to follow the overall logic of this template. You can use a different kind of template. It's okay. We don't really, are strict on that. But what I would be strict on is for you to follow the instructions. Please, please, please read the instructions. In the instructions, we tell you what the funding cannot be used for. And then time and time again, when we see the applications, people ask for exactly the things that are not allowed and loud and clear in the instructions. So follow the instructions. This is, again, my #1 advice for everybody all the time. If you are unsure, you can send us an email again and inquire about your specific scenario or situation, and we'll investigate that individually and try to take a look at this individually. But overall, so make sure that you do not include things like international airfare from the US to Southeast Asia and back. So this is not allowed. You can include airfare between countries in Southeast Asia if you have some necessity for your project. Again, knowing how the public health situation is going to look like, we don't know. So try to be safe and kind of plan smart. What would be your alternative ideas if flying is not quite an option? Again, because you must implement your project between March and December 2021. So think about that. Again, sustained staff salaries and overhead expenses. I touched on that last time during the webinar, but what we mean is that your project cannot include, or your budget cannot include a salary for your project leader or project secretary, that they will receive this payment every single month for 9 months while they're running the project. It is expected that your project is basically done on a voluntary basis. Now, here I would explain, because we do have questions about that. Sometimes your project need to hire somebody to do a small, like I suggested earlier, like a website development, or you are hiring a photographer to make photography for your event. So for those cases, you can allocate a one-time fee or one-time payment. Maybe that web developer will be working for 2 months instead of 1 month. So then that fee would be like 2 months fee that you pay once, or kind of spread it out, but it's not more of a like a salary throughout the year. So I hope we are clear on that. Let me know if you still have questions on that. So large items of durable equipment. So if you are thinking about buying a huge drone for $2,000, this is something that is most likely not going to be allowed. Again, it needs to look smart within your budget. If you are requesting, let's say, $5,000 to run your project, and then 3,000 out of those 5,000 is something that you request for the equipment, like buy a computer or something else, you will probably most likely be disqualified under the YSEALI Seeds expectations anyway. So some small equipment items could be allowed in individual cases. Again, something we will talk with selected winners on case-by-case basis. Sometimes people need to provide a cell phone or something to like a key partner in the area, where without that phone the project is not going to happen. So in those cases we'll take a look at that and see what's possible, but keep in mind that any large durable equipment is most likely not allowed. Same thing goes for like construction. If you are thinking about building a school or building some kind of facility, that's something that is most likely not going to be allowed. Again, we need to look more into the proposal just to see what it is exactly, how you're planning to allocate this funding, but overall stay away from those. Again, so academic research, unfortunately, this is not an academic research type of program. If you're interested in pursuing some more research or academic focus, there are other wonderful programs like Fulbright and other things that YSEALI does, so check that out. And again, and also partisan political activity is also not allowed. So if you are going to promote one or the other political activity in your country, unfortunately, this is not allowed under YSEALI Seeds. So stick to those rules and you will be okay, I would say. What are the important things here to mention? The maximum amount you can ask is $15,000 US. You can fill out this budget form in your currency. I would say it's quite honestly easier for us to see it in US dollars. And you can use on the currency converters, like a website that we use when we try to see accurate currency conversion rates. So again, my personal recommendation would be to provide your budget in US dollars. That's just easier for us to review. Besides, we know that currency fluctuation happen and they might affect you know, the overall total that you're requesting. So if you put it in US dollars, I would say it would be more secure in that way for us to ensure that the amount you put in your proposal in US selected stays that way, versus if you put it, let's say, in Indonesian rupiah, and then by the time you're selected, the currency has changed, but the way we will be converting that total that you ask in Indonesian rupiah is on the day, you know, that we are going to be sending you your funds into US dollars. So the amount may change either in your favor or not. So again, in order to just make it easier on everybody, I would recommend you to convert everything in US dollars in here. And another thing to say here is that when you ask for funding, you don't have to ask for $15,000 if you know you're not going to use it all. In fact, you know, we ask you to be feasible and smart about things that you're asking. And some things that I see sometimes in the project that they think that, oh my gosh, I need to ask for as much money as I can and then figure it out. No, quite honestly, you need to provide a plan right away. And if we see that you're hoping, let's say, to do a 2-day workshop and then some kind of educational materials that ideally would probably cost $2,000 in your specific country, but you're asking $15,000 for that, it would be questionable for us how feasible it, why do you need that much money to do this work? So try to stay accurate, and again, not to be over ambitious and under ambitious, keep the middle, but be realistic about how much you need. Don't underestimate or overestimate. Just try to research the market and kind of know, do a little bit, don't just guess on your budget. Oh, the flight from Jakarta to Manila will be this much. Well, you better kind of search and see how much approximately is that flight, so you can include that in the budget based on some kind of research, not just kind of guessing the numbers. All right, I realize that we are running behind a little bit again, as always, so we still have 5 minutes more to wrap this up, and I'm almost at the end, and I'll take the questions. So additional documents, as I said, 5 pages tops, quality, not quantity. You can include charts or photos or any reports from your previous, you know, successful accomplishments. That's great. The video, like I said, it could be MP4 format, or better, include the link to the video. And again, if there are any questions, anything that you know, we have not covered, please feel free to send us an email at YSEALI@culturalistas.org. And let's look into the questions. Thanks everyone for sticking around and, you know, asking all of your great questions. And I know that my colleague Jill has been answering some of those as well. So great, keep them coming. All right, let's see. YSEALI Seeds implementation period is from March, December. Would it still be possible to apply for projects that would start earlier, let's say January or February? I would say generally we could. Again, I understand it's probably education project, right? You're talking about, because your education or the semester starts a little bit earlier and you kind of want to do something already. It could be generally allowed. We just need to see overall what's the plan and the cohesiveness of your plan altogether in the proposal. Again, if you do have in mind, you know, some measurable instruments to measure your impact, and you do have a strategy and the end point of your project and how you're going to manage finances, if those things are kind of explained, you know, I wouldn't say no to you. We just need to see more details. I hope that makes sense. If you have more specific things to comment, feel free to send an email specifically to us. We'll look into that more. Is it compulsory to describe the previous involvement with YSEALI? No, if you don't have any previous involvement with YSEALI, you can just leave it be, because it is not marked as mandatory. If it is marked as mandatory, you can just say, no, have not had any previous YSEALI involvement. That's okay. Just as long as you, again, sign up to become YSEALI member, the instructions are in the beginning of the application, as I mentioned earlier. How should we contact to project advisor? Isn't during the process, whether before you select the project or after? I'm not sure what you're trying to ask. So if you're asking how we You mean how would you be in contact with somebody who is in charge of YSEALI Seeds, who's going to be overseeing all of the project completion? Once you're selected, trust me, you will know us really well because we will be talking to you a lot, especially when it's time to submit reports. You will know painfully well. Of course, I'm kidding, but those projects who are selected, you will receive an email. Basically, everybody will receive an email. It's just some people receive an unfortunate email saying that, I'm sorry, we cannot select you at this time. And some people receive good news saying that, congratulations, you have been selected for YSEALI Seeds. And then we will ask you to sign some documents that we will be sending you. We will be in contact with you. We will have our 2-day virtual workshop, so you will know how we look like, who we are, and all of those things. So don't you worry about that. If I did not understand your question correctly, please send me an email or send us an email to the email address you see right now and let us know. Let's see. All right, so assuming that the project is successful and complete, are there project leader, secretary, and treasurer prohibited in applying again in the future? So good question. So you are not prohibited from applying. You can apply as a support team members or as consultants, but you cannot run the project again as a core team member. So basically, if you were a project secretary on the YSEALI Seeds project in the past, even like a few years ago, unfortunately, you cannot be a project secretary, treasurer, or leader again on the new YSEALI Seeds project. But you can still participate. You can consult and guide and mentor those who will be applying again. And this is just, we want to be fair to all of the young leaders out there who have not had this opportunity yet, and they do have great ideas. And again, like I said, we received so many applications. Last year was 500 applications. So we want to be fair and give a chance to young leaders with their ideas. But please support them, engage with them, participate. I mean, we would love that. We would love that. All right, let's see. And we are at 9, or actually at 8 your time right now. So anybody who needs to drop out of the call, it's fine. Feel free to do so. I'm going to stick around longer to answer more questions. But then again, just a reminder to everybody, you will receive an email with the slides and the link to the recording of this webinar today into your email if you provided it once you entered this Zoom webinar. All right, more questions. Okay. What do you mean by the funds cannot be used to cover sustained staff salaries? All right, I think we've covered that, but just briefly to make sure that we did not miss anything. So sustained staff salaries means that you as a project leader, your secretary, and your treasurer put in your budget or in your YSEALI Seeds budget that you, 3 of you, will be receiving salary every month from the beginning of your project until the end of your project. So this is not allowed, unfortunately, or in fact anybody else on your team that you will include as a salaried employee. So technically it is not allowed. What we say, you can still receive or you can still plan and allocate funds for a small time or one-time fee for contractual work, or if you hire somebody to do some kind of short-term small project for your project, that's allowed, but not the salary. I hope that makes sense. Let us know. All right. Okay, is sports education allowed to compete for the funds as the education and economic growth sector? Yeah, please let us know. I just need to know a little more about the details of your project. What do you mean by that? But yeah, in 2019, we actually had a project from Laos who had a sports project, and they did some work with youth as a part of that too. Do we have to be registered as an organization, group, or business? No, you don't have to. You could if you want to, but it's not a requirement. You can be just a group of good friends if you want to participate and do things together. Can the abstract be in point form? No, your abstract, I would advise for your abstract to be, because it's just one paragraph, literally just 100 words. You could include, you make a PDF and you can include some kind of visual picture or something like that. It's fine, it's up to you. But I would say stick to Word or PDF file, just because it's one page and it's just like a one paragraph really, and focus on the text rather than on anything additional. So I hope that makes sense. And let's see, wow, look at us. We are almost done with all of the questions in here, as far as I can tell. Actually, no, hang on a second. All right, I'm planning for vocational training. YSEALI Seeds doesn't allow me to buy heavy machines, which might cost large amount of money. So I'm contracting to the government technical school where some requirements for my project are available, such as heavy machinery, office space, etc. are available. We also have experience working with NGO and this kind of vocational training. I'm not sure if it's a question, but I guess like I might see where you're going with this. So yeah, what I would love to see for some project like yours is a cost share side of your YSEALI Seeds budget. So if we go back into our slides here, so over here you see total, and you can add another section where you would say, oops, where you would say cost share. So what you are talking about, it seems like, is that there is another organization or NGO or another entity or your own organization could share some of the cost that it takes for you to run your project. And in fact, what is a smart thing to do is those expenses that are not allowed under YSEALI Seeds could be allowed under another funding that you have, right? So, and this is what we did, in fact, with some of the current projects that we have. For example, they needed to, buy some heavy equipment. So instead of charging that expense to YSEALI Seeds, they would charge it to their other partnering organization who provided funding to do this. So it's a very cool thing. And in fact, I like to see the cost share for those of you who have your own organizations. That also shows commitment. That shows that, okay, somebody else has invested in your project. That means that we have even more trust that your project will actually come true and will happen. So you are allowed and encouraged to apply for additional funding as well. You can do crowdfunding or any other additional grants or not other competition, that's fine. Will you be able to provide us a sample abstract? Unfortunately, no. And the reason for that, I mean, I wish I could, but unfortunately, I just want you to be original and innovative and not replicate somebody else's work or somebody else's, I guess, way of constructing. So the best I could do for you is to show you just the instructions of how it should look like and what should you include, but then the words you choose to put as your own art and your own work. But again, don't be scared. We are not requiring you to be the best author or poet or anything like that. We just want you to stay true to what you're passionate about and tell us about your project in the best way you can. All right, so let's see. If my team has more than 3 members, what should I do? Do I have to attach their name on the application? No, not at this point. If you have more than 3, this is great. It's up to you. As long as you just provide 3, that's great. No need to attach additional resumes for that. Okay. Everyone, my question, good day everyone. My question is, what if our application did not approve? Can YSEALI team support us, because we are eager to implement our project here in the Philippines to help those I need, more specifically first families. I hear you and I feel you, and it's great to see that you have a passion and desire to do something in your community. And like I said, we do recognize that so many of you have great ideas, and it's YSEALI Seeds is not the only thing. Obviously, you can still run your projects, apply for other funding. If you are not selected for some case, you can still participate in a variety of different opportunities that YSEALI provides. There are so many different kinds of trainings, different webinars, different sessions that are out there that you can watch. You can train your team, you can participate and get better. But unfortunately, if you are selected with YSEALI Seeds, you're working within the YSEALI Seeds program, and that's where you receive support. But if you're not a part of YSEALI Seeds, unfortunately, we won't be working with you. But again, like I said, look for other YSEALI opportunities that are out there and stay tuned for those. Are we allowed to include budget of rooms that we rent to conduct a project? Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing that you should include in your project. If you require a space for your workshop or some kind of training, include this fee. Just do your research. So it's you don't just make up that amount, right? So let me actually stop sharing my screen. All right, so everybody can see me, I hope. And we will just finish up with some of the questions we have over here. Thank you for sticking around. So many of you still sticking around. If you have to go, that's okay. You can watch this in recording as well, just as a reminder to everybody. YSEALI alumni who secured seed funding for other projects from YSEALI Regional Workshop, but not YSEALI Seeds, be a project leader. Yes, if you are a YSEALI alum from another YSEALI program, please apply. That's great. We love to work with YSEALI alums, definitely. So you're not prohibited as long as you're not a YSEALI Seeds recipient in the past. Right. How about per diems and allowances for travel? Can it be covered by grant? Yes, it can. Just need to make sense. And again, you need to explain a little bit more. For example, what is the purpose of the travel, where, and it also needs to just have some of a narrative explanation or make sense in the budget itself. So yeah, but this is allowed. Okay. Let's see, how can the abstract be in point form in some parts? I think we've answered that. I think the question is, can the abstract be in PowerPoint? So I would advise to stick to Word or PDF just because it's really 100 words. It's just very small abstract. Hello, is it allowed for us to buy small equipment such as 3D printed for our project? Typically, I would say no, it might be considered as a large durable equipment, and with the YSEALI Seeds for the Future funding rules, this might not be allowed. Again, see if you are partnering with another organization or receiving another funding, and you can cover that expense from another source of funding. So other things could be covered by YSEALI Seeds, but not purchasing of those kinds of equipment. Same thing, by the way, for salaries or overhead expenses. For those of you who are asking, if your organization, if you apply as a part of your organization and you already have employees who receive salary from your organization, this is great. This is a cost share. That's the expense that your organization is taking care of. Then the YSEALI Seeds could be spent on other things that are actually allowed within the grant. All right. Let's see. So this one we have done. Again, if you want to stick around, feel free. I'll be happy to stick around a little longer. If not, you will receive the recording of this video. So just a second. All right. Is budget final? What if we spend more or less? Okay, great question. Thank you, everyone. So the budget that you submit for your proposal is great. You need to put as much effort and work and wisdom into this as you can. Once you are selected, you will be given an opportunity to revisit your budget again and work on this again after you attend our workshop. During the workshop, we'll talk even more about budget and what it takes to manage your funding for YSEALI Seeds. So you will be able to rewrite it or rework on the budget before you receive your YSEALI Seeds funds. In terms of what if we spend more or less, again, this is something that we will help you and teach you on, having a specific, like maybe buffer amount of sorts for miscellaneous expense or something like that, that can help, cover some of the like bank transfer fees or some things that are unpredictable. But more or less for the proposal purposes, for your application purposes, try to be as precise as you can and follow the instructions, knowing that, you might be able to rework your budget if you're selected. Okay, could part of the budget be used to pay for IP and other copyrights for producing a product for the company? Great question. I will have to look more into specifics of your project. Typically, what you produce as a project entity during YSEALI Seeds is yours. We don't claim to have rights over it. But we might need to look into more details. What exactly do you mean as copyrights for? Is it something that you're going to produce a product that you're going to make profit off of in the end or not? Again, as a reminder, while you're implementing your YSEALI Seeds projects, you cannot charge public any fees for the products that you produce on the YSEALI Seeds. The public needs to benefit from your project. So your project cannot gain any receive financial gain from implementing it. So I hope that makes sense. Let me know you can feel free to email if you have more specific additional things to add. Do I need to include in the budget form the resources that will be provided by our own organization? Sure, this could be called a cost share. So you can add a segment in the budget and just say, okay, you know, here are the things we are planning to use YSEALI Seeds funding for, and here are the things that we are planning to use my organization's funds for. It's great. Like I said, it actually helps us see that, you know, you're committed financially as well to make the project happen. I mean, you don't have to, I don't want to say that everybody should be doing it. If you don't have cost share or additional sources of funding, it's fine. You can still, you know, apply for YSEALI Seeds. Okay. All right, so we still have quite a bit of questions to go through. Thank you for sending all of those. If I don't go over all of them, again, you can always send us an email with your specific questions, and some of the things we'll be covering during our third webinar and fourth webinar as well. Okay, let's see. For social enterprises, what if the bulk of the budget is for production of items to fund the community's development projects so they can reuse the profits after? Yeah, so the answer to your question would not be, unfortunately, like yes or no. Again, it will depend on the stipulations and specifics of your project. I would say, so one thing I would highlight here is that during your YSEALI Seeds project implementation, you cannot charge money from anybody, from the public to benefit. But once you are done with YSEALI Seeds, typically we want you to plan your long-term sustainable longevity of your project. And that sometimes requires maybe you to charge some consultancy fee later on or something like that in order to sustain your project so it can still benefit the public, right? So you kind of break even almost, but it's not, should be as a money generating source in a way. So I hope that makes sense. But what I would encourage you to do, Jara, send us an email with a specific, or you can just go ahead and apply for YSEALI Seeds in your proposal and just kind of be clear and upfront about what it is that you anticipate. And the committee will be looking at your proposal and we'll let you know, if you are selected, we will work with you on figuring this out. As long as you just follow the premises of YSEALI Seeds overall, that's okay. Can we support the transportation fee for trainer that we invite to support the recipient of the project? Yes, and you can pay a small fee to a trainer if they, or a speaker if they charge. You can definitely do that. So if somebody is really looking for an advice here, I'm planning for, okay, vocational training. Okay, we answered that question already. Can the equipment be partly budgeted? If we are to buy a $600 camera that we only budget for $300 and find other sources of funding for other $300, will that be allowed? Tricky, you have very smart questions, everybody. So thank you for thinking it through. I would say on an individual case, it might be allowed. Again, we just need to see the purpose of that expense. If this is a vital, essential part of your project function and you really cannot exist without it, this might be allowed. So go ahead and just include that in the budget and provide explanation, and we'll look into that. Okay, so can office space rent be covered by the grant? Only if it's just a one-time meeting you have. We cannot, so office space rent from month to month would be considered an overhead expense, which means that sometimes you pay like office rent, electricity, internet, all of those things. So, and that is not allowed by YSEALI Seeds. But if it's just, let's say you're renting an office space for 2 days of the event, that's allowed, that's fine to do. Or you are renting a space for a meeting of your team, once a month, that's fine, okay? All right, so we plan to make a budget for LCD projector to 8 schools for our target participants. Is it allowed? Or is LCD projector counted as large equipment? Depending on how much it costs. So I would say you can still include it in your budget, and we'll take a look at that on individual cases. Like I mentioned earlier, typically some of the smaller equipment pieces that are not that expensive in consideration of your overall total requested amount those could be allowed again on individual cases. We just need to see how much of that, and it looks like that's quite important for you, because without that projector, you won't be able to do your project at all, seems like, right? So just provide an explanation and justification. If it makes sense, it could be allowed. But again, I don't want to say yes or no exactly. We definitely need to see the proposal more. Can we work with religious organizations but in NGO, because the recipients prefer to work with a religious officer? We've had some proposals like this in the past. Just need to be sure that you are not sort of participating or benefiting only one specific group, and others cannot receive any benefit from that, or you're kind of closing the opportunities that you're providing only to that secluded group of people. So your project needs to be open to the public, so it cannot be only benefiting this like one small group and prohibit others to participate. I hope that makes sense. But generally, yeah, we do, and we've had projects in the past who would work with like monastic schools and do some kind of projects or events there, but as long as you diversify and openness for others, this should work. Okay, may I know the examples of personal expenses, which is listed in the balance sheet, and does website development consider an overhead cost? No, website development would be just your separate sort of consideration, or your separate expense. So it is not an overhead cost in this specific scenario. I think I already explained what the overhead cost would be. So let me actually quickly take a look at my budget here. So you're thinking about personnel. So it's not personal, it's personnel. So personnel are all of the people who will be sort of working with you on the project. So here's where you can include any contractual fees. For example, you invite a trainer to provide services for your participants for like 2 days, and you have to pay them like $50 or something like that. So this is something that you could include in that personnel section of your budget. Or let's say you need to hire 20 volunteers to assist you with a large event of sorts. I don't know why all of my examples say events, but that's what I can think of. So for that, you can also allocate some, a stipend for a volunteer to help out, or to cover some of their food expenses or travel expenses or something like that to the venue, to reimburse them. You can include there. Again, so these sections in the budget: supplies, travel, personnel, and other are just suggestions. You can work around that if that does not make sense to you for your project. You don't have any supplies, but you have a lot of, let's say, personnel expenses or travel expenses. You can work on around that. What I would say is that try to not make it that one section of the, for example, all of your money go towards personnel. This would be a little bit not suspicious, but it's just going to be difficult to justify. So it kind of needs to be equally spread out, or it just needs to make exact sense why specifically personnel needs to take that much space in terms of funding allocation. Again, the rule of thumb here, if you know that phrase, the rule of thumb here is to provide explanation for things. If it makes sense, some things are negotiable and you can figure out. Okay, so hopefully that explains. Is it okay to provide salary for team members by considering their workload? Thanks. No, unfortunately, I think we've covered that already. So no sustained salaries to core team members. My proposal is a 45 days boot camp for juvenile delinquents. Is it okay that it will not reach until December 2021? No, unfortunately, you must have your project completed, or whatever your main goal of the project needs to be completed by December 2021 in order to receive YSEALI Seeds funding. If you hope to do some additional events after that main event, that's fine. It can happen after YSEALI Seeds, but some of the core principal events or activities that you are hoping to do within the YSEALI Seeds needs to happen within that period of time. Okay. May I know if doing an indigenous literature and language documentation analysis is acceptable? I'm going to need to look into more details. What exactly do you entail by that? Is that just going to be a paper that is published at the end? If so, then it's considered to be a research and it is not allowed, unfortunately. But if you're doing some kind of engaging workshops and teaching other people about that and engaging the community in this, and community can benefit from some of the activities, this would be a different story. This would be more of a project oriented. So if it is a project oriented, then you can apply. If it's more of basically you want to use funding so you could do a research and publish a paper, then the answer is no. Can I have the video of this presentation after closing this? I want to watch it again. Yes, so if you, when you entered Zoom webinars, you provided your email address. So everybody who provided email address will receive an email from us with a link to this webinar and the slides. If you haven't, you can always email us and ask, and we will send the link to you again. Could part of the budget be used to pay for IP? Okay, we answered that one. In the job description, project owner is mandatory to have bank account. How if our community already have their own bank account? Yeah, if you have already a bank account of your organization or somebody else, sometimes it's the project leader's bank account that projects use, that's okay. As long as you have a good strategic plan, how you're going to manage funds and how you're going to separate the finances that come to you from other places versus YSEALI Seeds finances, that should be okay. All right. If our project is mainly based on helping people through a website platform, can we include budget under website development? Sure, just break it down. I'd say instead of just putting website development, $3,000, you know, like this, I would be like, what? Why do you need that much? Break it down more and give me more details or kind of ideas for, okay, the labor for developing is this much, the IP or like the domain name is this much. Just break it down and explain it a little more. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. How many projects will you select? Good question. So currently we're aiming to select 24. We will see how it goes. We will definitely select at least one project from each country. Some countries like Indonesia, Philippines, and Vietnam, who typically have a larger population density and they typically submit most of the applications, those countries will receive more spots to select more projects. So if you look on our website from previous years, so this year from Indonesia, we have 6 projects and I believe 5 projects from the Philippines. So that's about 5 or 6 from Indonesia, 4 or 5 from the Philippines, and 3, you know, 3 to 4 from Vietnam, and then some smaller countries will get one country per one selection per country. All right. Can we include budget of financial aid for flight tickets to the project team members? I'm not sure what you mean by financial aid. If you're asking if you could include sort of include costs for flights and travel for team members who are traveling for important project events, yes, you can. It's just going to be travel expense. So just, you know, calculate how much is it going to be, and you can YSEALI Seeds funds can cover that. So is it compulsory need to mention each description for the budget since it's not involved in my project? For instance, traveling to the other countries restricted due to COVID-19, so I try to do a virtual project which does not involve traveling expenses. Well, if your project does not involve traveling expenses, do not include them. So if you know that you want to play safe and not have any in-person events, which I would personally do, I believe with the COVID-19, our life has changed quite drastically, and I don't think we will see any soon us all coming back to how life used to be before. So if you're planning your project, maybe the safest thing is to plan virtual events or something within your community, maybe that does not require as much travel, at least for the beginning of your project. So again, if you have more of our expenses on virtual things, like you need to purchase a Zoom license or something like that, that's appropriate. You can include that if you don't have travel expenses. How about allowance for team member when we conduct a full day activities? So this one is a more tricky one. I would say if you are, let's say, a professional facilitator and you have full credential for professional facilitator, and then you have an event, you as a project leader, I mean, and then you have an event and you invite other professional facilitators who also have the this credentials to run this event. But then in addition to you running the project, you also sort of providing your services of a professional facilitator in that capacity for the event, then you might get paid the same amount as you pay to your hired contracted facilitators. So it could be a one-time fee that you pay for that. So I hope that makes sense. It's just an illustration or an example in what cases the project leader, secretary, or treasurer might receive a one-time small fee payment. But I would kind of try to stay away from, you know, charging if in the budget we see a lot that the project team is charging a lot, or kind of allocating a lot of money to fund their, to kind of pay them, and I'm not talking about reimbursement. If you have some expenses, for example, travel, lodging, other things for the project, you can be, you know, reimbursed, or this expenses could be paid by YSEALI Seeds. But if we see just sort of a contractual fee payment in large amounts or quite frequently, this might not be quite advised. But again, I don't want to say no or yes exactly, just because I want to see a little bit more of the details of your proposal. If it makes sense and you can logically convincingly explain this in your budget, we could take a look into that. For personnel, can my team and I put it as our allowances one time off? Again, just like I explained previously, it needs to have a specific place and needs to make sense. Why is it needed? So if you provide convincing details on that, we will definitely look into this. It just should not look like you are trying to profit or get financial gain from YSEALI Seeds. So that's kind of my advice to you. What about funding a community for a sustainable livelihood? Can equipment might be the materials needed for them? Will that be acceptable to the budget? If you want to send an email, I'm not sure exactly what are you asking. So it's difficult for me to answer, I guess, what exactly you're trying to ask. Yeah, I mean, all of the projects that submit have a sustainable livelihood in mind, and they do have some of the, like a small pieces of supplies that they buy. But if you're talking about large equipment pieces, those are not allowed. Some smaller ones could be, in some individual cases, considered. Again, all right. Okay, and thanks for those who are sticking around. Oh my gosh, there's like 143 of us here. I can't believe that you can still, you're still tuning in. Thank you for staying long. Again, you don't have to. If you need to drop off the call, that's okay. I just want to honor the questions that we have, and we're quite staying longer than we supposed to or used to. So I'm going to take a few more questions and then let you all go. And then if I did not get to your question, please send an email for sure, or tune in for the webinar next week. When we say education, are we restricting the target audience for students and the youth only? What is the program wants to include professionals and graduates? Yes, please do so. We don't restrict education in so many things. So you can educate anybody, and it still could be an education project. It does not have to be a formal educational institution setting. Are the evaluation criteria judged score equally, or is there greater emphases in some over others? Good question. You guys are so smart. So basically it's judged equally. I would say when the projects are evaluated, they evaluated amongst the country that is submitted. So we don't compare, you know, project from Indonesia to project from Philippines, and that's how we make a selection. So typically we review the projects within the country and select the strongest project within the country submission. Okay. And again, like I said, some of the more, some of the projects that we like to see more would be like quite impactful with measurable impact. Some train the trainer projects or projects with multi-country involvement. So in those kind of cases, again, if it makes sense, but it doesn't have to be, like I said. And in the past, we've selected projects that didn't have train the trainer aspect or multi-country, and they were amazing projects. So it really depends on the strength of your proposal. How much percentage of budget can we use on things like computer or like buildings? So you can't really buy a computer or buildings with YSEALI Seeds funding. or by buildings, you probably meant rent. So if it's a one-time rent, it's fine. If it's a sustainable kind of office space renting from month to month, it is not allowed. But with percentage, I would say it just needs to not overtake your entire budget overall. We just need to see that you allocate funds for some other activities as well, or at least show in the cost share that, you know, your other activities are covered by the cost share or something like that. I'm currently working on Precision Architect. Can I use the funds to purchase small equipment to install or use site for data collection? Again, I think I've answered that before. If you, we will take a look at this in individual case, depending on how much it costs, how important it is for implementation of your project. What are you going to do with that large equipment? That's another piece I should have mentioned too. If you're, you know, like you need to have who's going to benefit from that piece of equipment after you're done with the project. You're going to donate it to a university so they can use it and teach students. What are you going to do with that? Or try to make money off of it later on? Like that's something that we might not necessarily be pleased to see. So again, send an email with a specific question or submit a proposal and we'll take a look at that. In some cases, it could be a great project idea, but this budget items could be not allowed, and then we will ask the project to find additional sources of funding to cover these expenses that we cannot cover. So sustained salary is not allowed for 3 members, but it is allowed for other experts or professionals who help in the implementation of the project. Yes, not quite. So it's not like that the salary is allowed for other professionals. It's just the one-time fee is allowed for those professionals who come to help you. Let's say as a speaker, you invite somebody to share their professional expertise. So you can invite them and pay them a small honorarium or a small contractual fee for one time, but it's not a salary, okay? Is it allowed to allocate funds for farming equipment that will share to partner farmers so they can use it on their farm? Yeah, good question. This is something that the committee will have to decide on. So in some cases like this, we might have to consult with, you know, the State Department or U.S. Mission to ASEAN to provide their input on this. So I'd say please submit your proposal. We'll take a look at that and take a note on that. You know, in some cases, some things could be allowed again just because of the specifics of your project. What is considered partisan political activity? Good question. So partisan political activity means that either one or another political force or a party or entity in your country, you know, and you want to join sort of or create a project that will promote this, you know, one or the other or both kind of political activities or political presence or agenda in a way. So basically we're trying to say that the YSEALI Seeds project should stay away from the politics overall and just kind of bring the benefit to the community, regardless of what personal political views they might have. They just don't bring it into their project implementation overall. So I hope that makes sense. I would like to ask one thing, that if one project wins the award and completed till January 2022, will YSEALI continue with that project for the continuity or giving advice till the project stops? So we will be checking, like for example, you're done with your YSEALI Seeds participation, we will definitely want to stay connected to you. You as an alum would be able to, you know, send us updates about your project, but we are not going to be formally no longer formally like requesting reports from you or anything like that. It's just going to be more of a friendly relationship that we want to cherish after you are done with your official participation overall. Okay, so somebody is asking, where do we write the budget narrative? So you can provide right there in the section of your budget form if you feel like you need to describe something more than what you put on the item description. You can just provide like a little field where you know, explain this. Or what I've seen in the past, people would just use their project proposal to explain some of the most important pieces. For example, if you know that you need to that you will be allocating a lot of funds towards personnel. So then in your project proposal description, you would explain why your project requires so much personnel expenses in the way that in order for us to make this project happen, we need to invite this professional and that, trainer and this facilitator. And you can even provide names of specific organizations if you know that you're going to partner with them. So it is more clear for us that the substance of your project relies on these specific trainers, for example, to help you out in making the project a success. Or same thing for travel or supplies or something like that. If you know that by looking at your budget, one of the section, requires quite a bit of funding that, we will need explanation for, use the space in your proposal to address that so we know, and there's no question why your project might need more supplies than another. All right. All right, everyone. I think I'm going to wrap up just because it's quite a long video. It would be quite a long video for us all. Thank you so much for participating and for sending all of your amazing questions. Those questions are very smart, very thought through. I really appreciate everyone. So I would say if I did not get to your question, I'm very, very sorry. There's so many. I still see that we have 26, so we probably won't be able to get to that. So please send us an email, and Jill just posted in the chat our email address, YSEALI@culturalvistas.org. If there is a burning question, please send an email. You can also go in and rewatch all of the webinars from the webinar series from 2020. There is also a playlist on our YouTube channel, Cultural Vistas YouTube channel, so you can actually see similar information that we've provided last year. So you will find some answers to your questions there. Again, there's going to be a webinar next week. And thank you, Jill. Yeah, she just posted a link to that playlist from 2020. So next week we will have another webinar with YSEALI Seeds grantees, and then the final one, final webinar, the fourth webinar. Again, it's probably going to be just the webinar for Q&A for all of the questions. So yeah, but again, if you don't find answers quite yet, please send an email to us. We'll try to reply to you as soon as we can. But yeah, thank you, everybody. It's been amazing to see all of the really thoughtful questions and all of the comments, and thank you for tuning in today. Again, we hope to see you all next week, same time. And please check YSEALI Seeds, YSEALI Seeds social media and YSEALI Seeds website for more information and more instructions. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.